start by you just introducing yourself to us.
Okay, I'm Ian Booth. I am the minister of the United Congregational Church of Southern Africa. I have 2 part-time jobs as well as being a minister of the church, and that's I run a YMCA in the city and relaunching the program work at Diakonia Council of Churches. So Diakonia Council of Churches was started in 1976 by the Roman Catholic Archbishop Denis Hurley. Right from the beginning it was an ecumenical agency, it involved all the churches. The aim of Diakonia was to be the social justice voice of the church. In fact, it should have been to accompany churches in being social justice activists themselves, but ended up kind of doing program work for the church instead of with the church. It started in March 1976, so just before the Soweto riots of that year. So that started in 1985. So remember, 1985 there was a state of emergency in South Africa. There were a number of prominent church leaders who were in the Durban Central Prison, not because they were criminals, but because they were political activists. And so on Good Friday in that year, Denis Hurley and a group of church leaders in Durban started at the Central Methodist Church in Durban, processed through the streets and stood outside the prison wall and started singing hymns, and then could hear the people inside responding. So the hymns were coming back at them. And that was the beginning of this tradition of the Diakonia Council of Churches Good Friday service. Each year there's a particular theme, and it always has to do with some issue of justice. The procession is always silent. So it's a silent expression of solidarity. One of the early ones I attended, we started in the Roman Catholic Cathedral and then processed through the streets to the City Hall. That particular year, so 94, was just before the first democratic elections in South Africa. There was political violence in KZN in Carter versus ANC, and the cross for the occasion was made from a burnt beam from an IFP house and a burnt beam from an ANC house, and they were joined to make the cross, and that cross was carried through the streets of Durban that year. So each year there's been a focus on that, and over the years they've focused on issues like gender-based violence, children being trafficked, so human trafficking, xenophobia, the foreigner violence. That focuses on the fact that Jesus' family were refugees in Egypt. The evolution of the Good Friday service has been from those beginnings to an annual event which normally takes place in the Durban Exhibition Centre, starts at 6 a.m. on Good Friday, and we seat just over 3,000 people in the Exhibition Centre, and those 3,000 people then process silently from there to the City Hall carrying the cross. So in the early days of the Good Friday services, the people who occupied the City Hall were the oppressors of the social activists in the city. Now, most of them had been part of the procession or had been in the prison themselves at some stage. So they've all benefited from Diakonia's work over the years. So it's a more friendly face we find at the City Hall these days. It's an expression of solidarity with those who are suffering. It's a public expression of the church making a statement. So the church gets out there and says, we're with you, we walk alongside you. I think the value for the city of Durban is that that's become a national event. In fact, I drive home from the Good Friday service and hear SAFM telling me how many people were there. So it really puts Durban on the map because it's a Durban-based event, but it's a nationally recognized event. And we have the mayor, we have the city manager, we have the premier of the province, we have MECs who are all part of the process. I think it's significant that more than 3,000 people, not those that have to be there because we're part of the whole setup, more than 3,000 people get out of bed early on Good Friday morning, drive into town and sit in the exhibition centre, participate in the service and join the procession through the streets to the City Hall. There has to be something that brings them out, and that And we always try and have some symbolic acts. There's liturgical dance. We try to carefully pick a preacher that's going to touch a chord in people's hearts. The fact that it works is that more than 3,000 people get out of bed early, drive into town and attend the service. But that's how it's evolved. COVID changed that. So in 2020, we couldn't have a Good Friday service at all because all public gatherings were banned because of COVID. 2021, it's what do we do that's different, but still says we're here and we care. And so for this year, we've chosen, instead of a procession carrying a cross, because you can't do that, and you can't seat 3,000 people in a building, we're setting up a stage opposite Addington Hospital, using the hospital as a backdrop. And the theme will be to honor the healthcare workers. Healthcare workers have laid their lives on the line in the last year, and some have lost their lives in the last year. So that theme fits very neatly with the Good Friday theme of Jesus offering his life and calling us to deny ourselves and take up a cross and follow. And so we'll link those two. But the primary purpose is to honor the healthcare workers who have laid their lives on the line for us. We will invite healthcare workers, so we've invited from our member churches people to send us names of healthcare workers, but also give us names of those who have lost their lives, so we can say their names at the service. And at the close of the service, and this is part of the tradition, so we'll carry a cross through the streets, lay it down on the City Hall steps, and then we put flowers. We invite the congregation to come forward and put flowers on the cross. It's flowering the cross, the symbol of hope that's always there if you follow Jesus. And we will still do that this year. At the end of the service, we will flower the cross, and the names that have been sent to us in advance, we will put the names of those who have lost their lives on the cross with the flowers. So we flower the cross, go home and do the same, put flowers out, but know in your heart that the flowers are honoring those who are not with us any longer. But also a sign of hope. There's always got to be the sign of hope. So having shared this worship time with us and witnessed the honoring of healthcare workers in this way, we encourage you tomorrow to put white flowers outside your home and know the message of the flower is an honoring of healthcare workers and a sign of hope, but then to continue to keep in mind those that are risking their lives to keep us healthy in a time of global pandemic when they are at risk every day. Yeah, so my sense would be that within people's spirits, Jesus is speaking to them about the need for solidarity, to walk alongside the suffering, and the willingness for the church to get out there and be visible and not just sit inside our four walls every week. The church needs to be in the world. It's an incarnate church.